Nothing stings quite like humiliation, especially when it comes from someone you adore. That was Henry's story, a 17-year-old boy who just wanted a taste of happiness in high school. With a quiet demeanor and a larger frame, he was often the target of cruel jokes and taunts. But he found a spark of hope in Sophia, the most beautiful girl at school, or at least, she seemed so to him. In his eyes, she was everything he wasn't: confident, popular, graceful. So when she suddenly invited him to her party, Henry's heart leapt. He pictured this as the beginning of something extraordinary. But what started as a dream would soon twist into a nightmare. He was embarrassed by the girl he adored. 2 years later, he did something awful in retaliation. You wouldn't even fathom what he did. Henry was a 17-year-old lad who weighed 220 pounds. At school, some unkind classmates taunted him with derogatory names and incessantly harassed him. He often felt isolated and melancholy, but there was one girl who consistently made his heart race. Sophia, the most stunning girl in school. Henry was infatuated with her, but he never thought she would take notice of him. One day, something extraordinary occurred. Sophia invited Henry to a gathering at her residence. Henry was so elated he couldn't fathom his ears. He believed this might be his opportunity. He wanted to make a favorable impression, so he leased a costly outfit and even borrowed a lavish car. He wanted everything to be flawless. In his excitement, Henry also borrowed funds from acquaintances to purchase extravagant presents for Sophia. He envisioned how delighted she would be when he presented her with the gifts. His heart brimmed with optimism. He thought perhaps this was the inception of something extraordinary. When the event day arrived, Henry was anxious but elated. He adorned himself in his new ensemble and drove to Sophia's residence in the opulent car. The abode was teeming with students, and everyone was reveling. Henry smiled bashfully as he presented Sophia with the gifts he procured for her. But then something peculiar transpired. Sophia and her companion began chuckling. Henry felt his abdomen tighten. Why are they laughing? He pondered. Just then, Sophia stood up and seized everyone's attention. Henry's heart raced with anticipation and trepidation. He thought she was going to utter something sweet, but instead, her words impaled him like a blade. "It was a wager," Sophia said with a malicious grin. "We wanted to see if I could date the most unattractive guy in school." The room erupted with mirth. Henry's heart shattered. His legs weakened and his face reddened. He couldn't fathom what he was hearing. This can't be transpiring, he thought. He yearned to vanish, to dissolve into oblivion. And as if that wasn't sufficient, Sophia's actual boyfriend emerged from the crowd. He sneered at Henry and said, "Do you truly believe you can afford a stunning girl like Sophia?" Henry's eyes widened. His heart thudded in his chest, and tears welled in his eyes. The laughter grew louder and louder, reverberating in his ears. He couldn't bear it any longer. Concealing his face in disgrace, he dashed out of the party as swiftly as he could. As Henry sprinted, his thoughts spiraled with rage and humiliation. He had been demolished, and all his aspirations about Sophia were shattered in front of everyone. But deep inside, something sinister began to burgeon in him, a fervent desire for vengeance. When Henry returned home after the party, he locked the door and sobbed until his eyes swelled. His heart ached from anguish and humiliation. He picked up his phone, hoping to find solace, but it only exacerbated his misery. Clips from the party were ubiquitous on social media, and everyone was ridiculing him. Henry felt as if the entire world was laughing at him. His face burned with shame, but something deeper began to flourish in him: fury. "I'll exact revenge," he whispered to himself. For 2 weeks, Henry didn't attend school. He turned off his phone and sequestered himself. Even his few acquaintances couldn't reach him. He spent his days contemplating what transpired and how to exact revenge on Sophia and everyone who derided him. He was too humiliated to show his face to anyone, but he couldn't hide indefinitely. 2 weeks later, Henry decided to return to school, but he didn't want anyone to recognize him. He went to the market and purchased a mask to conceal his face. He believed the mask would aid him in evading the harsh gazes and laughter. When Henry entered the classroom, his heart was pounding. He hoped no one would discern him, but as soon as he entered the room, it erupted with laughter. The sound of Sophia's boisterous laughter echoed through the hallways, audible enough for students in the adjacent class to hear. Henry felt so diminutive and humiliated. He yearned to flee from the room, but how long could he evade them? He bowed his head and sat quietly at his desk, hoping the laughter would cease, but it didn't abate. Sophia and her friends started laughing even louder. "He's wearing a mask," one of them shouted, laughing and pointing at Henry. He felt tears scorching his eyes, but he refused to weep in front of them again. Sandra, one of Sophia's acquaintances, smirked and decided to take it even further. She approached Henry, extending her hand to tear off his mask. Henry froze, feeling his heart pounding with fear. He didn't know what to do, but then something unexpected happened. Emily, the quiet girl from the back of the classroom, suddenly grabbed Sandra's hand, stopping her. Emily was one of the few economically disadvantaged students in school and had received a scholarship. Her mother worked as a housekeeper in Sophia's house. Emily knew the pain of mockery and couldn't watch as they humiliated Henry. "Leave him alone," she said firmly. The entire class fell silent for a moment, surprised by her courage. Emily looked at Sandra and Sophia, her eyes filled with anger. "Haven't you had enough of tormenting him?" she asked, her voice trembling but full of bravery. Sophia's face twisted with annoyance. She wasn't used to anyone opposing her. "Shut up," she snapped. "Do you have the audacity to talk to us like that? I should tell the whole class that your mother works as a low-income maid in my house." The class erupted in laughter again. Emily's face flushed with shame. She never wanted to get involved in a conflict with Sophia, but she couldn't stand by and watch as Henry was humiliated. Some students murmured that Sophia had gone too far, but no one dared to speak up. When the school day ended, Henry caught up with Emily as she was walking home. He felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Thank you for standing up for me. I'm sorry that Sophia said those things about you and your mom." Emily gave a sad smile. "It's okay," she said. "I'm used to it." Henry looked at her, feeling ashamed that he had ever loved Sophia. He couldn't believe how cruel she truly was. Can we be friends?" Henry asked uncertainly. Emily smiled warmly. "Why not?" she said. They exchanged contact information and started walking together. It was then that a luxurious car pulled up, and Henry recognized it as Sophia's. The driver called out to Emily. Henry looked puzzled. "Is that Sophia's driver?" he asked. Emily sighed. "Yes, but I'm not going." "What do you mean?" Henry asked, surprised. "You're going in the same direction, right?" Emily nodded. "Yes, we live in the same house, but I don't ride with her. I'm going to help my mom with household chores first. Sophia never allows me to sit with her in the car, even though her father told the driver to take us both home because we go to the same school." Henry's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe that Sophia was even more heartless than he thought. She refused to let Emily, whose mother worked in her house, ride with her in the same car. Henry watched as the car drove away, feeling a deep anger rising in his chest. How could someone be so heartless? He had once been in love with Sophia, but now all he felt was disgust. Just as Henry and Emily were finishing their conversation, Henry's driver arrived. Henry smiled and turned to Emily. "Hey, do you want a ride? We can give you a lift home." Emily's face lit up with surprise and joy. She wasn't used to people showing her such kindness. "Really? That would be great," she said, feeling grateful. She hopped into the car, and they drove away. When the vehicle pulled up to the grand, opulent residence of Sophia, Emily thanked Henry once again and disembarked. "Take care, Emily," Henry said as the vehicle drove off. Emily waved, feeling a bit of warmth in her heart despite the challenging day. But as soon as she entered the house, that warm feeling vanished. The first thing she saw was the living room, inundated with filthy water. Her mother was on her knees, scrubbing the floor, her eyes red from tears. "Mama!" Emily rushed to her. "What happened? Who spilled all this water here?" Her mother looked at her, her face full of sorrow, tears streaming down her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away, but new tears appeared. "It was Sophia," she said in a quivering voice. "She came home a few minutes ago and started pouring water everywhere. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. She just kept calling me a low-income maid and saying terrible things." Emily's heart filled with fury. She knew exactly why Sophia had done it. It was because of what had occurred at school earlier. Sophia was punishing her, humiliating her mother. Emily clenched her fists. She couldn't believe how cruel Sophia could be. "I'm going to talk to her," Emily said, standing up with anger. "She can't treat you like this." Just then, a frigid chuckle echoed down the stairs. Emily froze and looked up. There stood Sophia at the top of the stairs with a malevolent smile on her face. She folded her arms and looked down at them as if they were insignificant. "Next time, you'll learn to respect the hands that nourish you," Sophia said derisively. Then, without warning, she grabbed a bucket filled with even more water and poured it down the stairs. The water splashed all over the living room, making the mess even worse. Some of it splattered on Emily's shoes and attire. Emily's body quivered with rage. She wanted to ascend those stairs and confront Sophia. She wanted to scream at her, make her feel the same anguish she was causing. But just as Emily was about to rush up the stairs, her mother grabbed her by the arm. "Please, Emily, don't," her mother pleaded weakly. "It's not worth it." Emily halted in her tracks, tears filling her eyes. She felt powerless, ensnared. Sophia controlled everything, and there was nothing they could do. Emily's heart ached as she looked at her mother, still kneeling on the floor, exhausted and shattered from all the cleaning. Emily couldn't hold back any longer. She burst into tears, crying so hard that her whole body shook. Her mother embraced her tightly, holding her even though she was crying too. "It'll be okay, my girl," her mother whispered, though she was crying too. But as Emily cried in her mother's arms, she made a silent vow to herself. She wouldn't let Sophia get away with it forever. One day, everything would change. While Emily and her mother finished cleaning, Sophia was up to something devious. While they were occupied, Sophia quietly slipped into the kitchen where Emily's mother kept her purse. She peeked inside and found the house key with a sly smile. She concealed the key in her pocket and silently returned upstairs, unnoticed by anyone. Later that evening, Emily and her mother were utterly fatigued from the arduous labor. They departed from Sophia's residence, dragging their weary feet, yearning solely for the comfort of their home and rest. However, upon reaching their front door, they discovered a horrifying truth. They had misplaced the key. "Oh dear, where is the key?" Emily's mother inquired with a voice laden with concern. Emily's eyes widened in alarm. "Perhaps we left it at Sophia's house," she suggested, feeling her heart plummet. "I'll go back and retrieve it, Mom. Just wait here." Emily swiftly hailed a taxi and rushed back to Sophia's residence. It was late, and the streets were dimly lit and quiet. As she neared the house, her stomach knotted, but she was resolute in finding the key. Upon reaching the front door, Emily was about to knock when she suddenly heard voices emanating from the living room. It was Sophia's parents, Mr. Michael and Mrs. Linda, engaged in conversation. Emily froze. She didn't wish for them to see her at that moment, so she crouched down behind the corner and listened attentively. "She has spiraled out of control," Mrs. Linda's voice dripped with irritation. "Sophia spent an exorbitant amount of money on that party. You know, she even borrowed funds without our knowledge." Emily's heart raced as she eavesdropped. Mr. Michael sighed deeply. "None of our children have caused us this much turmoil. We regret the day we took her in after her biological mother passed away." Emily gasped softly, her eyes widening in shock. What did they just say? She pondered. Sophia isn't their biological daughter. Her mind raced, trying to process the revelation. She felt a twinge of sympathy for Sophia, but was also perplexed by the cruelty she had displayed. It was then that Emily realized she needed to act normally. She knocked on the door and waited. When Mrs. Linda opened the door, Emily feigned ignorance. "Good evening, ma'am," she said courteously. "I believe I left my mother's key here earlier." Mrs. Linda looked at her with weary eyes. "Oh, the key. Let me assist you in finding it." They searched the living room and kitchen, but the key was nowhere to be found. Emily knew Sophia must have taken it, but she remained silent. After a while, she left the house empty-handed, her mind still reeling from the secret she had overheard. On her way home, Emily couldn't cease thinking about what Mr. Michael had said. Sophia isn't their biological daughter, she repeated silently to herself. The girl who had caused so many issues wasn't even part of their family by blood. When Emily finally arrived home, her mother was waiting outside, shivering from the chilly night air. "Did you find the key?" her mother asked, her voice filled with hope. Emily shook her head sadly. "No, Mom, it wasn't there." Her mother sighed in disappointment. It was very late, and they had nowhere else to go. With no alternative, they had to sit outside in the hallway of their own home. The night was cold, and they embraced each other for warmth. As they sat there, the sky grew darker, and soon a heavy rain began to fall. The rain poured down like a cascade, drenching Emily and her mother. They huddled in a corner, their bodies trembling from the cold. Their clothes were soaked, and they had no shelter to protect them. Emily could feel her mother shivering beside her, and tears welled up in her eyes. She wanted to do something, anything, to improve the situation, but all they could do was sit there, cold and wet, through a long, stormy night. At school, Sophia's behavior deteriorated further with each passing day. She became even more malevolent, tormenting her classmates and showing no respect to the teachers. No one dared to stand up to her, and she reveled in the fear she instilled. Her laughter resonated through the hallways every time she made someone feel insignificant. One day, Henry paid a visit to his cousin Kelvin. Kelvin was an emerging singer and gradually gaining fame. As they spent time together, Kelvin showed Henry something on his mobile device, a new composition he was developing. While they conversed, a notification popped up on Kelvin's screen. Henry glanced at it and was taken aback. The message read, "Hi, I'm one of your most ardent admirers. Please respond to me." Henry examined it more closely and saw who the sender was. It was Sophia, the very girl who had made his existence miserable. He couldn't fathom it. Sophia, he mused. The same Sophia who always behaved as though she was superior to everyone else. Kelvin noticed the expression on Henry's face. "You're acquainted with her?" he inquired curiously. "Yeah," Henry replied, his voice laced with astonishment. "She's my classmate." Kelvin raised an eyebrow slightly, amused. "Well, it seems like she's a big fan of yours," he said, showing Henry an extensive list of messages Sophia had sent him. Henry chuckled. He couldn't believe his eyes. Sophia, with all her haughtiness and ego, had been sending messages to Kelvin for months without receiving any responses. "It's unbelievable," Henry remarked, shaking his head. "Sophia is craving attention." An idea occurred to Henry. He looked at Kelvin with a smile. "Cousin, can I ask you a favor? Let me respond to her." Kelvin smiled and handed Henry his phone. "Go ahead, let's see what happens." Henry swiftly typed a reply, pretending to be Kelvin. He sent her his WhatsApp contact and wrote, "Here, message me here, and we'll chat." Within a few minutes, Sophia sent a barrage of messages to Henry, believing she was communicating with Kelvin, the renowned singer. She was incredibly polite, so different from the arrogant girl at school. Sophia pleaded for a reaction, telling Kelvin how much she admired him and adored his music. As Henry read the messages, he couldn't help but smile. She had no inkling it was him. The girl who had once shattered his self-confidence now desperately sought his attention, merely because she thought he was someone else. Before Henry retired for the night, he pondered his next move. "This could be my opportunity to teach her a lesson," he thought. The following day at school, Sophia was as obnoxious as ever. She paraded through the hallways, acting as if she were the queen of the castle. After Henry, pretending to be Kelvin, began communicating with Sophia, things took an unforeseen turn. Sophia couldn't stop talking about the impending school ball. It was a grand event where all the students attended with their partners, dressed in opulent attire, and danced the night away. Sophia, excited about the ball, sent a message to Kelvin. "The ball is approaching. It's going to be extraordinary." Henry, grinning at his phone, replied, "Would you like me to accompany you to the ball?" Sophia's heart skipped a beat. Without a moment's hesitation, she quickly replied, "Yes, yes, I would be delighted." She was overjoyed, envisioning how everyone would be astounded when they saw her arrive with Kelvin, the rising star. She couldn't wait to flaunt her accomplishment. In the interim, at the educational institution, all the pupils were elated. Everyone was abuzz about the upcoming ball. Couples collaborated, planning their attire and honing their dance techniques. Students without partners frantically sought dates, hoping to secure one before the momentous night. However, Henry, with his robust physique and ungainly demeanor, struggled to find a companion. Each time he approached a girl, she rebuffed him, chuckling derisively behind his back. Emily, the girl who had previously stood up for Henry, faced a similar predicament. No one wanted to accompany her to the ball because of her financial circumstances. It was a disheartening situation for both, feeling isolated and spurned. Henry could endure it no longer. He resolved to ask Emily if she would be his partner for the ball. Nervously, he approached her after classes. "Emily," he stammered shyly, "would you like to accompany me to the ball?" Emily, taken aback and touched by his proposition, smiled warmly. "Yes, Henry," she replied. "I would be delighted to go with you." Henry felt a surge of relief and happiness. Finally, he had a partner for the ball, but matters were not so straightforward for Sophia. Now she found herself with two suitors, her boyfriend and Kelvin. Although she was supposed to attend with her boyfriend, she yearned to make a statement. She craved attention and always relished setting new benchmarks. Sophia ended her relationship with her boyfriend a few days prior to the ball. "You're no longer on my level," she told him coldly. "I require someone superior." Her boyfriend's heart was shattered. He had already made all the arrangements for the ball, envisioning a perfect evening together. He couldn't fathom that Sophia, the girl he cared deeply for, would abandon him so callously. On the other hand, Sophia paid no heed to his feelings. She was too preoccupied with her dream of entering the ball on the arm of the popular singer Kelvin. She desired to be the center of attention, the girl everyone discussed. Henry and Emily began spending a significant amount of time together. Emily noticed how disheartened Henry was about the ball, so she devised a plan. She decided to assist Henry in getting into shape and bolstering his self-confidence. Emily had always been supportive, and it made Henry feel special. They commenced working out every day after school. Emily even created a specialized diet for Henry, instructing him on what and when to eat. Henry took the training extremely seriously, more so than anyone could have anticipated. He couldn't believe how fortunate he was to have someone like Emily by his side. Initially, they were merely pretending to be each other's dates for the ball, but as they spent more time together, something shifted. They began to develop feelings for one another. Every time Emily encouraged him, Henry felt happier. He trained harder and harder, all because Emily believed in him. Emily's words motivated him to work even more diligently. As the ball neared, Henry started to look and feel different. His clothing fit better, and his face radiated energy. Emily was proud of how diligently Henry had worked, and Henry realized how much Emily meant to him. However, Henry still had to maintain the charade with Sophia. A few days before the ball, pretending to be Kelvin, Henry sent a message to Sophia. "Hey, I'm truly sorry, but I don't think I'll be able to make it to the ball. My vehicle was involved in an accident and is currently in the repair shop. I'm uncertain if it will be ready in time." Sophia quickly responded, "Oh no, don't worry about it. I can arrange for a car, and I'll take care of everything for the ball. You just need to show up." Sophia was resolute in attending the ball with Kelvin, regardless of the circumstances. She knew that preparing for the ball would be costly, and she didn't want to ask her parents for financial assistance. So Sophia resorted to a devious plan. As her mother was absent from the residence, Sophia infiltrated her mother's chamber and pilfered two of her most valuable necklaces. These were resplendent and crafted from pure gold, items her mother held dear. Sophia swiftly disposed of one of the necklaces for a substantial sum of money and concealed the other in her own room. With the proceeds from the sale of the necklace, Sophia devised a plan to lease an opulent vehicle and purchase the most exquisite dress she could find. She smirked to herself, envisioning the attention she would garner on the night of the ball. The day preceding the ball was brimming with anticipation at the educational institution. Everyone was discussing their attire, their companions, and how extraordinary the celebration would be. Yet, within Sophia's household, a dreadful event was unfolding. Sophia's mother had just returned home from a shopping excursion when she sensed something amiss. She proceeded to her room to prepare for the significant occasion, only to discover that her two most treasured necklaces were missing. She rummaged through every drawer, every container, but they were nowhere to be located. Panic enveloped her heart. "Where are my necklaces?" she inquired aloud. Sophia, who was in the living area, feigning busyness, overheard her mother's voice and hastened to her side. "Mom, are you all right?" she asked, pretending to be concerned. "My necklaces, I can't find them anywhere," her mother replied, clearly distressed. Sophia smiled, a devious notion forming in her mind. She viewed this as the perfect chance to accuse Emily's mother of pilfering the necklaces. "Mom, I think I know what happened," she said. "I saw Emily's mother sneaking into your room earlier. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I'm certain she stole the necklaces." Her mother gasped, shocked by the allegation. "Are you certain, Sophia? This is a grave matter." "Yes, Mom. I saw her with my own eyes," Sophia asserted, feigning confidence. "You need to inspect her bag. I'm sure they're still in there." Sophia managed to persuade her, and her mother reluctantly agreed to search Emily's bag. When Emily's mother arrived at Sophia's residence to assist with the evening chores, she had no inkling of what awaited her. Sophia and her mother requested that she join them in the living room. She appeared anxious. "Mrs. Johnson, is everything all right?" Emily's mother inquired. Sophia stepped forward, her tone icy. "We believe you took something that doesn't belong to you," she said coldly. "Empty your bag. We want to see its contents." Emily's mother froze. "What? No, I didn't take anything," she cried, tears already welling up in her eyes. "I would never do something like that." But Sophia persisted. "I saw you sneaking into my mom's room. You stole her necklaces." Sophia's mother, although reluctantly, felt like she had no alternative. She gently asked Emily's mother to open her bag. With trembling hands, Emily's mother complied, her heart pounding in her chest, and she felt so scared and hurt. She had worked for this family for years, and now they thought she was a thief. Sophia's mother began searching through the bag, and then something astonishing occurred. At the bottom of the bag, she discovered one of the missing necklaces. "How? How did this get here?" Emily's mother gasped, completely taken aback. "I swear, I didn't take this." Tears streamed down her face, but no one seemed to believe her. Sophia stood there, concealing a smirk. She had hidden the necklace in Emily's mother's bag earlier that day, knowing that this moment would arrive. She wanted to ensure that the blame wouldn't fall on her. "Where's the other necklace?" her mother demanded, her voice now filled with fury. "If you took this one, you must have the other one too." Emily's mother, crying, shook her head. "I don't have it. I don't know where it is." "That's not enough," Sophia snapped. "If you don't return the other necklace, we'll have to involve the authorities." Soon, Sophia's mother, with a shattered heart and believing her daughter, contacted the police. Emily's mother was apprehended, even though she continued to assert her innocence. The police took her away, and Emily, who had come to see what was happening, could only watch in horror as her mother was taken away. She ran to her, shouting, "Mom, I know you're innocent. I know you're innocent." But it was too late. The police vehicle drove away, and Emily was left standing outside Sophia's house, crying uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Sophia stood inside, watching from the window, feeling like a triumphant victor. Finally, the eagerly anticipated night arrived. The night of the ball, and the atmosphere was brimming with excitement. The students were adorned in their finest attire, and everyone was discussing who would be accompanying whom. Sophia stood in front of the mirror in her room, marveling at her reflection. She looked breathtaking in her opulent, gleaming dress, her hair impeccably styled. She smiled at her reflection, feeling like the belle of the ball. But something troubled her. Kelvin didn't answer any of her calls. She dialed him repeatedly, but there was no response. Sophia felt a knot forming in her stomach. Why isn't he answering? She pondered. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Kelvin. "Meet me at the school. I'll be there shortly." Sophia let out a sigh of relief. She grabbed her expensive bag, the one she had rented using the money from selling her mom's necklace, and headed to her car. Her heart was pounding with anticipation. This night will be perfect, she thought. When she arrived at the school, the ball was already in full swing. The hall was exquisitely decorated. Lights twinkling everywhere, couples arrived with their dates, and music filled the air. Everyone looked resplendent, but Sophia wasn't interested in them. She was waiting for Kelvin. As the minutes ticked by, Sophia began to worry. Where is he? She thought. Then, finally, her phone vibrated again. I'm here. Read the message from Kelvin. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She quickly left the hall and went outside to meet him. But when she saw him, her heart sank. Kelvin was there, but something was amiss. He was dressed in a long coat that concealed his entire body and a mask that obscured his face. Why are you dressed like that? She asked, feeling uneasy. It's a surprise, replied Kelvin, his voice low. I want to make a grand entrance. Sophia smiled, feeling the excitement again. All right, she said. Let's go and sit down. They strolled through the corridor, and people began to stare. Everyone whispered and murmured, curious about who Sophia's new boyfriend was. Her ex-boyfriend, who stood with his friends, looked crestfallen. He couldn't wait to see the guy Sophia had chosen over him. Sophia and Kelvin reached the stage, and the room fell silent. All eyes were on them. Sophia, feeling proud, held Kelvin's hand tightly as they stood on the stage. Unveil yourself, someone shouted from the crowd. Sophia. Sophia smiled and looked at Kelvin. It's time, she whispered, her heart racing with excitement. Kelvin slowly reached for his mask, and everyone watched in anticipation. But when the mask came off, the entire hall gasped. It wasn't Kelvin standing there on the stage. It was an elderly homeless man with missing teeth and a scruffy beard. His clothes were torn beneath the coat, and his face looked dirty. Sophia screamed in horror as the crowd burst into laughter. People pointed at her, laughing so hard they were almost crying. Her ex-boyfriend laughed the loudest, and even her so-called best friends giggled. Sophia felt the ground slipping away from under her, humiliated and embarrassed. She ran off the stage, tears streaming down her face. Tears cascading down her face, she didn't stop until she reached the parking lot, where she spotted Henry and Emily arriving. But something was distinct. Henry, who had once been ridiculed for his appearance, now looked remarkable. He was fit, his clothes were trendy, and he wore a self-assured smile. Emily also looked stunning, her dress exquisite, and she resembled a princess. Sophia barely recognized them as she rushed past them, and she heard people whispering about how impressive Henry and Emily looked. Everyone admired them, but Sophia no longer cared. She was too mortified to even think clearly. She jumped into the rented vehicle and drove away, tears clouding her vision. Sophia didn't pay attention to the road. She was so upset that she didn't notice the tree in front of her until it was too late. The car collided with the tree with a loud impact. The opulent car, which she couldn't afford to pay for, was now entirely destroyed. Trembling, Sophia exited the car and realized what she had done. She had wrecked the car she couldn't afford to pay for. Her heart raced as she contemplated the trouble she was in. When she finally arrived home, she tried to open the door, but it was locked. She knocked and knocked, but no one answered. In desperation, she called her mom, but there was no response. She called again, and then a message appeared on her phone. It was from her dad. We're done, Sophia. Return to your grandmother's. We're exhausted of you, the message read. Sophia's world crumbled. She couldn't believe what she was reading. Her parents had discovered the necklace. Henry had told them everything with evidence. They knew that she had sold it to pay for the ball. They knew that she had caused them so much trouble. Sophia sobbed on the doorstep. She remembered how her parents had taken her in after the death of her mother, who worked for them as a housekeeper. They had provided her with everything, but all she had done was bring them pain. And now it was too late to rectify anything. Sophia knew that she had to return to her impoverished old grandmother in the village. She would have to drop out of school, and she would have a debt for the destroyed car. She wished to go back in time and fix everything, but it was too late. Everything was shattered. As she sat there, sobbing under the moonlight, Sophia realized that her choices had led her to this moment. She had lost everything, pursuing the shine of others. Sophia had lost sight of her own light. Don't forget to like this story if you enjoyed it, leave a nice comment, and subscribe.